Research has shown that volunteering and helping others are proven ways to help alleviate social anxiety. Research also shows that those that volunteer regularly experience a boost in their mental health. From my experience, volunteering can be an excellent way to gain some positive social exposure. In this video, I'll explain why volunteering can be an excellent way to begin to overcome social anxiety and some of the ways that you can begin to get started. Hey, I'm Neil and I struggled with social anxiety for more than 2 decades. On this channel, every week, I'll be bringing you the best methods and strategies that I've used in my own life to feel more confident. There have been scientific studies that have shown that people that volunteer and perform things like acts of kindness actually have a reduced tendency of avoidance over time. And this is very likely because by doing volunteering, that the response they get from people actually counteracts what they were expecting in terms of negative judgment, and they realise that most people are actually very nice and are judging them in a positive light after all. The sorts of acts of kindness that they performed didn't even need to be particularly time consuming or involve any amount of money. It could be things that you can just do in your day-to-day life. So these could be things just like holding a door open for somebody or even saying thank you as you get off a bus to the driver. These types of activities didn't even need to be conducted face to face either, but it is very important that you do them because you genuinely want to help other people and not just because you're trying to make yourself feel better. But in the long run, it can be said that if you have a focus on kindness during social exposure activities, then this can certainly enhance these types of exercises. If you do tend to avoid other people and spend less time around them as you'd like to, then the sense of loneliness that this can create can lead your body to be flooded with the stress hormone cortisol, and by volunteering you can actually begin to counteract this by beginning to build a sense of community. And it has been shown that people that volunteer frequently actually experience less negative moods as a result of this. Volunteering has been shown to reduce the negative effects of stress by reducing things like depression and loneliness, and it has been shown that people that volunteer more often tend to be happier overall. One thing that volunteering can be very useful for is if you struggle with phone anxiety, because with volunteering there are plenty of opportunities to make phone calls to people, and it's also a very low risk activity that you can take at your own pace. One example of this is a service like Age UK, where you get matched with a member based off of your interests, so it's likely that you have something in common and you can at least find something to talk about. And I've been doing this now myself for nearly a year, and I get to make a one-to-one call with someone every week, and I can say that it's really helped me a lot in that respect. The great thing about this is that you have so much flexibility because you get to decide when you make the call. You get to do it from home, so you don't obviously have to travel and that kind of thing, and the call can last as little or as long as you want it to, so you have so much flexibility. Another thing I did with Age UK once I become comfortable just doing a one-to-one call was to volunteer to help out with the ad hoc calls, and this is where you get matched with 10 random people each week. These are just people that are yet to have volunteers, and you just phone them for 5-10 minutes just to check in on them, see how they are. And because obviously you don't know these people, you're just phoning 10 random people that you've never spoken to before. So it's just really good exposure practice of getting those reps in and calling people and just getting used to chatting to other people on the phone in a really low pressure kind of environment. With something like the ad hoc calls, you can just stop them whenever you like. It's really very flexible, and I did them for a couple of months and then I stopped because it is a lot to be taking on. It can take a few extra hours a week to do it. But in that time, I did 10 calls a week for, it was at least 8 weeks. So that's a minimum of 80 phone calls that I made. So think about how much practice that is and what a difference that can make to your life if you do a similar kind of thing. In addition to Age UK, there are other services, things like Samaritans and Nightline, which you might have heard of. And I believe with these types of things, you do actually get to answer the phone instead of just making phone calls. So this can be really good, but there are training processes for these sorts of services. So it's not as simple as just signing up and then maybe a couple of weeks later you begin making calls. You do have to be much more committed to it and even make calls and do shifts in the middle of the night as well, which is something that you definitely have to consider. A really good thing about doing this kind of volunteering is that you really are making a difference to other people's lives, and you're not just doing it for the sake of trying to overcome social anxiety. So it can be a really good way to spend your time and to actually get better and more confident as you go along. If phoning people to make small talk or answering other people's calls seems like too much for you right now, then there are ways that you can scale it down even more. So I've seen on volunteering sites things like phoning people that have been in hospital to take surveys, or even supermarkets that want you to phone people and take surveys as well. So that can be another way that you can do it. You just have to go online and have a look. It only takes a few minutes and it's not that complicated to do. Another great thing about volunteering is that you can get to cover so many different types of social scenario. As I just mentioned with AGK, you get to phone people, so that covers dealing with things like phone anxiety, which can be really helpful. You can get a lot of practice of being around and dealing with members of the public, and something I used to do is called Park Run, and it's just a 5-kilometre race that's held every weekend, and all I used to do there was things like scanning people's barcodes or taking people's times as they cross the finishing line. And you can, in a very small space of time, less than a couple of hours, you can literally interact with more than 100 people, and these are just very brief interactions while you scan their barcodes, and then you get a bit of conversation as well with other people that are there and the other volunteers, which is really useful. I've even volunteered down at my local theatre, and that involved just doing things behind the bar like serving people drinks and even stewarding, so I'd check people's tickets, and then I'd even get to sit in and watch some of the shows, which could be a really good benefit because you get to watch a lot of different things that you may never have considered seeing before, and some of them can be really interesting and some of them not so much, so it's a bit hit and miss, but even so it's a good talking point, and it's another great thing to do, and especially if you struggle being around crowds of people, it's a really good way to get out there and just to practice with that sort of thing. There was even a digital inclusion service that I used to help out at, and this was just helping people that dropped in with basic technology problems they had. So it's things like learning how to use a smartphone, how to send an email, and CVs, that kind of stuff. So if you can open a Word document and you own your own phone, then you're pretty much qualified to be able to help out with this stuff. And again, it's just dealing with members of the public one-on-one and maybe in small groups, things like that, which is really, really useful. There's even things where you get to approach people on the street and take surveys and talk to them. I haven't done this kind of thing myself yet, but I've spoken to people that have volunteered in things like animal welfare where they do that kind of stuff, and I'm sure this sort of thing would really help with your approach anxiety and just maybe dealing with rejection and putting yourself out there as well, which I know is a really big fear that a lot of people with social anxiety have. In all the volunteering roles I've done as well, I've got to work with quite a diverse group of ages. So AGK, of course, you're phoning older people, and then the theatre can tend to attract an older crowd as well. But then I've also been a Beaver assistant leader, part of Scouts, so I've worked with children as young as 6 years old, and you get to do a lot of activities, play games with them as well, so you really get to test yourself and interact with a real wide range of people with all different kinds of interests, which can be really, really helpful. There are so many different volunteering opportunities out there, and because it's volunteering and you don't get paid, then it tends to be quite easy to get accepted into doing these things. So you just have to look for them and try different things and kind of find what's right for you and what you think can really help you to expose yourself and become more confident over time. One of the really good things about volunteering is the level of flexibility you have over as and when you do it. So pretty much all the things that I've done, you get so much flexibility. You can choose like the number of hours you do it, you can choose how often you do it, and if you ever want to stop, you can pretty much stop there and then, and you don't have to go back if it's something that really isn't for you. Both the theatre and digital inclusion volunteering I did had apps and websites that you could go on and you could see exactly which shifts were available, and then you could book the day, the time you wanted to do it, and you could see as well how long each one was going to be, so it was very convenient to do. And then the Park Run one would send out an email and I could just say which month, which dates I'd be available, and then the types of role that I wanted to do, so it was very easy to arrange. With most of these things, they're often highly available and the shifts don't tend to always fill up, so you can even put your name down less than a week before if you're not sure what you're doing. So you do have so much flexibility, and you can really leave it to the last minute if you're really not sure what you're going to be doing that day. Volunteering can really be an excellent way to fill any gaps that you have in your social calendar if you don't have enough stuff going on that week and you want to do something as well to get out and to be more sociable and just to work on your social skills and trying to overcome social anxiety. It's just a really great, convenient way to do that. I'd say that volunteering has helped me a lot in general, and it's just helped me in day-to-day social interactions and things like making phone calls, things like that before I didn't really feel that comfortable doing. And I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable enough doing the kinds of things I'm doing now, like making these videos and putting them up on YouTube, without having done all this volunteering in the first place. Volunteering has been a great way for me to keep meeting new people and to continue to challenge myself, and there have been aspects of it that I have largely enjoyed, although a lot of the time I find that it's much better to stick to doing things that you enjoy doing. So if volunteering does constantly feel like a chore and you don't really feel like doing it, then maybe do it in the short term and then stop and move on to something else, or try a different aspect of volunteering. I think in the long term, if you want to overcome social anxiety, it's far better to try and immerse yourself in things that you actually enjoy doing. So volunteering could be one way of doing that, but you don't want to keep forcing it and keep forcing yourself to do something if you're really not enjoying it. For me, volunteering has been a really great experience, and it has taught me so much, and I'd recommend it to anybody that's on the fence and wants to practice just being around people more and building that social confidence. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't go as well as you'd hoped, you can always just use it as a platform to move on and do other social activities that you enjoy. So I would highly encourage you to get out there and to try these things and just see what happens. If you'd like to take big steps towards overcoming social anxiety, I run weekly online group sessions where you can practice in a safe environment, becoming more confident and gradually easing yourself out of your comfort zone. I'll put the link down in the description. If you want to watch more, then click here to see my latest video. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this valuable, then please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.